Umkhonto Sizwe, meaning the spear of the nation, was created to fight the most powerful military force in Africa. A lawyer by the name of Nelson Mandela was appointed as its leader. Under his leadership, Umkhonto Sizwe was no longer going to play by the rules of non-violence in order to gain freedom for the African people. Instead, Umkhonto Sizwe was gonna fight fire with fire. The organization was gonna respond to the government's brutal actions by setting off bombs across the country. And if that didn't work, Umkhonto Sizwe was prepared to wage civil war on the apartheid government. Umkhonto Sizwe was going to drive a spear through the hearts of the apartheid regime and its bubble of supporters. But to truly understand the rise of Umkhonto Sizwe, we have to go back to its origins. I am sorry about that. Came back from work yesterday, got tired, decided to sleep, woke up, now I'm doing it about 7 o'clock. So let's continue. Where did I stop? Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, the ANC organized peaceful protests and the police would constantly respond with brutal force against the thousands of people who did nothing wrong but stand for their right. And instead of the government blaming the police for their actions, the government placed the blame on the organizations that started this peaceful protest. One of the most spoken example is the Sharpeville Massacre, where 75 police officers fired 700 rounds at a crowd of unarmed protesters. 69 people were killed and many more were injured. The police even continued shooting at the backs of the people who were running away. After this massacre happened on 21 March 1960, instead of holding the police accountable to their actions, the government then went and shifted the blame on the ANC and the Pan-African movement. The government banned these two organizations from the country. But what happened later on May 29, 1961 is what led Mandela to call for an organization that was armed and ready to fight against the government. On that day, on May 29, 1961, South Africa officially left the British Empire and became a fully independent country under the apartheid rule. In response, the ANC organized a stay-at-home strike, which was supported by thousands of people and other liberation movements. The government, under the leadership of Hendrik Verwoerd, responded by calling the military army to suppress this strike. Mandela later described this as the largest military call-up in South Africa since the World War II. It became clear to Mandela and the others that non-violence would not achieve their goals. With approval from the ANC and the other liberation movements, Mandela was given full authority to create the new independent armed organization that will fight back. Umkhonto Sizwe, which translates to Spear of the Nation. The symbol of the organization was a man holding a spear. This represented the legacy of the spear to the African warriors. Nelson Mandela, along with John Slovo and Walter Sisulu, formed the commanding role of this organization. The group was supposed to be a multi-racial group that will lead South Africa into a revolution. Umkhonto Sizwe considered 4 types of violence: sabotage, guerrilla warfare, terrorism, and when all else failed, an open revolution. But since the organization was closely linked to the ANC, which was still committed on the non-violence peaceful protest, they chose a path that would not take human lives but would still bring significant damage to the government. They chose the first option of violence, so they decided to use sabotage. Their tactic was to strategically place bombs in government buildings and systems so they could cripple the military capability and chase off foreign investment, which would then lead to a weakened economy. As history now shows us, this course of action proved to be effective. Umkhonto Sizwe members were forbidden from endangering human lives. A reasonable and respectable way to achieve liberation. But make no mistake, if all other actions failed, Umkhonto Sizwe was fully prepared to incite a revolution.